Call the May 19th, 2025 Board of County Commissioners meeting to order. At this time, Vice Chairman Thomas, will you lead us in our invocation?
Let us all pray. Our most kind and dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today thanking you for all the blessings in life. I want to thank you for our good health, for letting us be here today, God. God, we ask you to be with all the sick and the suffering, God. Be with the ones that are not doing well. Be with the ones that are fighting cancer, God. Be with those that are just struggling to make it through the day. God, we ask you to be with all our soldiers, God, that are watching over us overseas, God, and keeping us all safe. I want to thank you for all our first responders, all the people that answer the call, God, in the middle of the night to just keep us safe. And God, we want to thank you for just watching over us as being a father and just taking care of us and just watching over us as only you can. We ask you just to help this board make decisions going forward with the new year, God, and God, just help us to make decisions that you would want us to make. We ask you just for the leadership that you can give us, and we ask you just to work through us. God, we thank you for giving your son to die on the cross so we may have eternal life, and we just ask you to watch over us, lead us, guide us, forgive us for all our sins, God. In your heavenly name I do pray. Amen.
Amen. And Commissioner Wilburn, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members of the board, you have the agenda before you. Is there any discussions or adjustments to the agenda? Having here none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Moved.
Or you have a motion? Any further discussion? Having here none, all in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The motion's approved. All right. Item 5A, Foster Care Month Proclamation, Carlton Paler.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for this opportunity and the support that you all give us at DSS. So the proclamation for foster care in May 2025 says, whereas youth of North Carolina are our most precious resource and hope for the future, and all children deserve safe, loving, and nurturing place to call home. And whereas there are approximately 10,454 foster children in the state, and of those, 80 in Person County. And there are approximately 898 young adults ages 18 to 20 in extended foster care in North Carolina, and of those, 7 are from Person County. And where the purpose of foster care is to provide temporary, safe, secure, and stable homes through the compassion and nurturing of a foster family or kinship family. And whereas foster families and kinship families open their homes and hearts to children whose families are in crisis and play a vital role in helping children and families heal and reunify while launching children into successful adulthood. And whereas the dedicated foster families and kinship families sometimes adopt foster children, resulting in a greater need for more foster kinship and adoptive families. And whereas there are numerous individuals, communities, and public and private organizations working to increase public awareness of the needs of children, both in foster care and exiting foster care, and of the enduring and valuable contributions made by foster and kinship families. And whereas Foster Care Month is an opportunity to recognize the foster families, kinship families, child welfare professionals, and advocates working to ensure children's safety, permanence, and well-being, and to spread awareness on behalf of thousands of children in foster care in North Carolina. And whereas the state of North Carolina encourages people to volunteer their time, energy, and talents on behalf of children in foster care and their biological families, kinship care, and foster parents during this month and throughout the year.
Now, therefore, in recognition of foster care, the Person County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim May 2025 as Foster Care Month and commend its observance to all citizens adopted this the 19th day of May 2025. Members of the board, do I have a motion to approve the proclamation?
So moved.
We have a motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Proclamation has been approved.
Thank you all so much.
Item 6, informal comments. Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We have one individual signed up.
All right, we allow a 10-minute time segment, so 10 minutes for the speaker. Remind the speaker that to address the board as a whole, not an individual and not the audience. Please address the board. All right, Madam Clerk.
All right, the first speaker, the only speaker we have signed up is Matt Bowman. And if I can please instruct IT to set the timer for 10 minutes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Reverend Dr. Matt Bowman. I am a resident of Roxborough and am the pastor of Roxborough Presbyterian Church. I'm here today to speak on the need for a public pool in Person County. A public pool would offer many benefits to the residents of Person County. In addition to providing a safe place for exercise and recreation, a pool would bring jobs and provide an economic boost to Person County. Currently, my wife and I drive to Chapel Hill each Sunday to take our 3-year-old son to swim lessons. While we are there, we often go out to eat and do our weekly grocery shopping. That is money we could be spending in Person County. We are fortunate that we have the time and financial resources to do this, but we realize this is not the case for all families. The reality is that all children, regardless of race or class, should have a safe, inclusive, affordable place to swim. A public pool would not be just a place for children, but would provide all residents of Person County with a place to cool off, exercise, and develop a sense of community. For years, residents of Person County have been paying into a system that promised a public pool, but that promise has yet to be fulfilled. For all these reasons, we are calling on the Person County Commissioners to keep the splash pad in the 2027 CIP and support in every way possible the building of a public pool in Person County. I appreciate your time and look forward to working with you on this issue. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that does conclude our informal comment period.
All right, thank you. All right, Item 7, discussion adjustment of or approval of the consent agenda. Any discussion or adjustment? Having heard none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion's approved. New business, item 8A, employee benefits update. Sonia Collar.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Before I invite our guest up to give you an update on our health insurance, I just want to say thank you to the commissioners. You all have been a great support to our employees and the benefits that we offer, and I am great to have that support for our employees. So I'd like to introduce Mark Browder, who's going to give you an update on our health insurance for the upcoming year.
Great, thank you, Sonia. Good morning. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I think my presentation, there we go, great. All right, so I'm here today to give you an update on the health plan, how the plan's performing, how the renewal ultimately ended up, and generally speaking, the plan's been in a very positive space for the last several years. So in 22-23, the plan was in a positive position about $550,000, which the county retained those monies. In 23-24, still positive about $390,000. So over the last couple of years prior to this current year, the plan was in a positive position about $900,000. For the current year, claims are up about 11%. The drivers for that are cancer and especially pharmacy spend. Neither of these two items or issues are unique to Person County. Just as a reminder, over the past 5 years, the plan has actually been declining in claims net about 2.2%, which is amazing in an environment where you normally see claims up about 8% per year. For the 25-26 plan year, the plan was bid, and the result was very positive. It improved Cigna's position about $320,000, really put the county in a position not to need to make a change in payers. I'm sorry, do you have the presentation, sir? You can see it? Okay, great, thank you. The other thing that we're recommending for 25-26 is the change in the pooling level from $125,000 to $175,000. It reduces the premium. The net expectation in savings to the county is about $219,000. That's part of the renewal recommendation. And it doesn't negatively impact the members at all. There's no benefit changes, and for the current year coming up, there's no premium increases to the employees, again, supporting the board's desire for the strongest benefit package possible. The county is on the leading edge of population health management, has a diabetes and a weight management strategy that is on site and is cutting edge in its efforts and results. So the managed population in the diabetes program, their claims are lower by about $9,500 per year than the non-managed population. Your HR team works very diligently to try to get the employees who are not participating to engage in the program. It is in their best interest. Of course, it's voluntary. And the weight management strategy is now being recognized nationally as leading in technology, solutions, innovation for the participants in the plan. Aon just recognized the value of utilizing GLP-1s, which are the weight loss drugs, in the right set of circumstances, pairing it along with the on-site strategies that you are using today. And this is a quote from one of your employees. Just as a reminder, your employees appreciate the wellness strategies that you are deploying for them. It gives them an opportunity to improve their health, which is absolutely the most important thing that in anybody's life. And they are grateful for the strategies that have helped them to be successful in weight management and on the diabetes side as well. For the current year, as I mentioned, specialty pharmacy spend is up significantly, about 32%. The net impact overall is about 11% up this year. The plan is in a negative position, but has been softened by the $900,000 of positive positions that you have had in the plan in the prior couple of years. Another thing that has occurred is that there's been significant improvement in the pharmacy contract. It is a pass-through arrangement, and the plan will be getting back over $500,000 in the current year and the next year as well. So you're getting pharmacy rebates back. It's pass-through pricing. The bid result was very successful. We ended up with about $150,000 net of positive position from Cigna. And we also, moving that pooling level is going to save the county a significant amount of money on a go-forward basis for 25-26. So from a renewal perspective, there was no reason to make a change from Cigna. The net impact is about a 3% increase on the county funding side, changing the pooling level, and the net result is about a 2% increase for 25-26. We'll continue to monitor the plan. If claims continue to rise at the current pace into 25-26, it will put pressure on the renewal for 26-27. We'll be monitoring that, making sure that the county has all the levers pulled that will gain the best value in the plan with having the least or non-existent impact to the membership. So from a funding standpoint, the net impact is about a 3% funding increase on the county side, no increase on the employee side. Again, you're helping to protect the membership. The overall renewal is excellent, and the bid process was extremely successful. Questions of me?
Any questions from the board to the presenter?
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
have a good day.
Next item, manager's recommended budget presentation. Manager Kathy.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. I am happy to be at the point where I am presenting the fiscal year 26 manager's recommended budget. A lot of hard work has gone into this process over many, many months. The process started with communication to departments regarding expectations, and our departments put together very thoughtful budget requests that they submitted to finance. Following those initial submittals, we put together a budget team that met with every department to discuss their request. We then looked at a variety of different aspects of the budget, and we did work extremely hard to reduce requests to get to where we are with the manager's recommended budget. In addition, we also had requests from Piedmont Community College and the Person County School System, and we met with leaders from both of those organizations. And then we have a couple of requests from outside organizations that I'll go through as well.
So to get us started with the presentation, I do have slides to walk through. You have a copy of the printed budget in front of you, so you will be able to take that with you today for reference. And the budget will also be available online following this morning's meeting. First, I would like to, I need to get the clicker, just a second. First, I would like to highlight some of the accomplishments that we've achieved over the past, or in the current fiscal year as an organization. In this fiscal year 25, we were able to enhance employee pay and benefits. We added a cost of living adjustment this year, which we had not had in place for a while, and this was at the recommendation of the consultant who conducted our last classification and pay study. And we also sustained our merit pay program. So this was to enable us to remain competitive in the market, and we have certainly seen positive results from this strategy. We have improved employee retention. In addition to those pay changes, we added a number of benefit enhancements in fiscal year 25. As it relates to workforce, we also restructured our human services functions, creating a consolidated human services department and working with social services and veteran services staff on evaluating operations and making some changes along the way. So that has been a very strong group effort. When it comes to capital needs, we purchased the Human Services Building, and we also purchased a building for PCC's Center for Health, Advanced Technology, and Trades. And so that particular building is currently undergoing renovations to house some programs here shortly. And as far as the Human Services Building, we've been working on catching up on some of the deferred maintenance that happened while we were leasing that building. So we have done HVAC replacements. We're currently evaluating the roofing needs of that building. And then we're very close to completing the merger for Person Industries and the Recycling Center before the end of this fiscal year. Our employees have already moved out of the Person Industries building on Madison Boulevard, and we are currently working on the final recycling center renovations. As far as new initiatives, we've implemented a strategic plan, we've implemented the enterprise fleet management program, and improved our public records request process and online public meeting materials. And again, these are just select highlights amongst the many accomplishments this year. For economic development, we facilitated the sale of the Person County Mega Park to Microsoft, negotiated the sale of the county-owned North Park site, and that has actually sold. I missed that update on this slide, to Spuntech, and expanded our broadband service through partnerships with NCDIT, Brightspeed, and Spectrum. So as far as fiscal year 26, I gave you a preview of some of the big ticket items that we expected during the budget retreat, and I have refined this slide slightly. As far as what's included in the recommended budget for county workforce, we do have the addition of 7 new positions and a 3.3% COLA. I think it was 3.4 when I presented to you back in February. And then a 3% health insurance increase. And again, as Mark said, that is on the premiums that the county pays into our self-funded health insurance fund. Then for equipment and supplies, bringing the ALS 360 program online. This current year, we funded that with American Rescue Plan Act funding. So we are absorbing that into the general fund going forward. And we do have increased expenses for cybersecurity within our IT budget. For services, we are seeing legal expenses increase due to the nature of transactions that we've had related to property acquisition and sale, other legal matters within the county. So we are recommending increasing that budget. Jail medical, as you know, the expenses for that are going up, and then we need to start setting aside funding as required by the state for the next reappraisal. So that is another significant increase in the general fund budget for next year, as far as starting to fund that, because we utilized the funding that we had available already due to saving over several years in the current fiscal year for the reappraisal. With facilities, we're seeing increasing costs for utilities, and then we are adding debt service for the upcoming year due to the acquisition of the chat building, human services building. We also, within that debt issuance, funding the Person Industries merger and a roof for South Elementary School. So education funding, we've also had increased requests from both the school district and the community college, and those are built into the recommended budget. So these are some of our major budget drivers for fiscal year 26. The budget does continue to focus on the focus areas within our strategic plan. So as you go through the budget document, you will see how departments have indicated which focus area their various budget objectives tie to. So that's integrated within the document that you've received this morning. So some of those highlights include continuing to have ARPA funding reserved for a new airport terminal. We have $2 million set aside for that, and $2.8 million set aside for broadband expansion. Within the Economic Catalyst Fund, we have $1.7 million recommended in the fiscal year 26 budget for industrial incentives and other economic development activities. And then we are progressing on our runway extension project at Raleigh Regional Airport at Person County. As far as education goes, or lifelong learning, the CIP does include significant funding for debt for Person County schools in order to improve accessibility, safety, and security at 5 elementary schools and build out classrooms at Stories Creek Elementary. And then we currently have 2 grade grant projects underway as well as 3 CAB projects. So we are seeing fiber laid throughout the county and connecting more and more locations to high-speed internet. And we are continuing to work with NCDIT. We expect another CAB project to be awarded shortly, and then we will be continuing to look for other options to utilize that reserved funding that we have as a match for other projects going forward, with the goal of connecting 100% of our locations to fiber infrastructure. Person County Schools did submit a increase in their current expense funding of 8.64%. That is about a $1.2 million increase over the current year, and that is fully funded in the recommended budget, as well as PCC's increased request for current expense funding, which their current expense would total $1.8 million, and they requested a 6.93% increase. Within our service delivery focus area, employee pay, we're including a COLA again this year and merit. We're transitioning animal control back to the Animal Services Department and continuing to offer the Civics Academy, which was very well received in the current fiscal year and continues our community engagement efforts. Within the next focus area, we are helping to contribute to public safety and well-being with the replacement or the funding of the ALS 360 program to replace our aging patient movement devices, biomedical equipment, and AEDs used by EMS and the fire personnel. Again, we have already replaced that equipment in this current fiscal year, but we are needing to budget for that within the general fund for next year. And then using opioid settlement funding for the second year of programs within emergency services and the school system. So an overview of the general fund budget, it does increase by 6.38%. This is an increase of $5.1 million over the current fiscal year. And for all funds, the budget is recommended at $109 million. This is an increase of $7.8 million or 7.6% of the overall budget. This shows you how our revenue sources are distributed within this pie chart percentage-wise. The bulk of the revenues that we do use for funding our budget do come from property taxes, 57.5%. Then the next largest category is sales tax, and then intergovernmental revenues and charges for service. And then less than 5% of our revenue, or just over 5% of our revenues, are coming from other sources. We have recently concluded our most recent reappraisal, and we are in the process of considering some formal appeals. The Board of Equalization and Review is currently meeting to consider those. I do want to show you how our tax base has grown following the reappraisal, which is meant to ensure that the values, the property values within the county, are in alignment with the current market conditions. So overall, the tax base has grown by 33% from fiscal year 25 to 26. That is the chart on the left. This shows you just the overall growth. So within the property tax category, we are increasing from 5.32 billion to 7.25 billion. That's a $1.927 billion gain in value. DMV increased slightly by $2.6 million. But I do want to move over to the chart on the right just to show you in a little more detail how these property values are changing year to year. Because you've heard our tax administrator say in a previous presentation that we saw property values increase by about 52%. And so when he references that number, that's real property. So that is property that is only subject to reappraisal every 4 years or 8 years, depending upon that cycle. So it's been 4 years since we did the last reappraisal. So for real property, which is people's homes, their businesses, then that tax base increased from 3.7 billion to 5.7 billion. So that's where you get the 52% increase. But within that whole category of property values, tax base, we also have personal property. That is subject to being reported to the tax office and valued on an annual basis. So that only increased by 1.29%. DMV increased by less than a percentage point. And then state appraised property is appraised by the state. This is mainly our utility system, so Duke Energy properties, Enbridge properties. Those are valued on an annual basis. So we don't receive those values until September. So we are budgeting those flat because we do not know what the values will be coming in later, or as we're already into the fiscal year. So percent change of 0% there. So that's where you get an increase of the overall tax base of 33%, because the other values have been keeping up on a year-to-year basis with the market. So the significant change is there within real property of 52% due to the revaluation. So moving on to our property tax revenues. The recommended budget is based on a tax rate of 64 cents. This is a decrease from the current tax rate of 72.25 cents. And we did figure, and our tax administrator, Russell Jones, calculated our revenue neutral rate for us. There's a formula that leads to that calculation based on the last several years of our revenues and changes to our tax base. So the revenue neutral rate is 56.06 cents. So at the 64-cent tax rate, we are estimating that we will generate $45.6 million in property taxes for fiscal year 26. And then within the Fire and Rescue Tax District Fund, that tax rate will decrease from 5 cents to 4 cents, and the revenue neutral calculation within that fund was 3.89 cents. So we're estimating that we'll generate $2.4 million within that fund. So at this tax rate, 1 penny on the tax rate generates $759,236 for fiscal year 26. And then the collection rate in this budget remains at 97.5%. We have traditionally budgeted at that conservative tax rate because property taxes make up such a large percentage of our budget. We want to ensure that we are going to have the ability to collect on what we're estimating for property taxes. Every year we exceed that amount. I mean, we're usually closer to 99.5%. And in the current fiscal year, we actually adjusted that rate to 98%. I'm recommending that we go back to 97.5%. Again, that's a conservative way of estimating revenues. If we had a large bankruptcy or an inability for one of our larger payers to pay in the current tax year, then that would result in missing that mark of 97.5%. And whenever we collect over that rate, then the additional tax revenues can either support unanticipated expenses in that fiscal year or can go back into fund balance and help us build up that savings account for the county. Some other highlights related to general fund revenues, that 64-cent tax rate will generate an additional $8.4 million in revenues. That's a 22.6% increase in that particular funding source within the general fund. DMV taxes are barely increasing at all. It's a $12,700 projected increase over the current year. No change in sales taxes. We're budgeting that flat. And interest earnings, we're actually anticipating a decline of $700,000 in interest earnings next year due to interest rates that have been increasing. We do not anticipate any increases next year and perhaps would even see a decrease. So we are conservatively estimating a drop in interest earnings. So you saw earlier that our general fund budget grew by $5.1 million. But yet here we're indicating we're going to have an increase in property taxes of $8.4 million. And that is needed to make up for the lack of growth in other revenue sources, as well as making up for some one-time appropriations that we did in this current fiscal year that we no longer have that funding source to make those appropriations next year. So in order to keep our budget intact, continue to do what we're doing, and enhance certain services that we're providing, we do need that additional revenue with the 64-cent tax rate, which is above the revenue neutral rate, because we needed the additional funding source. So this chart just shows you how sales taxes have grown over time. So traditionally, over the last several years, we've been able to benefit from sales tax growth to add to our overall budget, but we do not have that in next year's budget, projecting no growth. For fund balance, I want to review how we are using that in next year's budget. Just as a reminder, we are required to have a fund balance to maintain that savings account for the county. This provides cash flow for the county because property taxes are not paid on July 1st. So we do not have that funding available to us when we start the fiscal year. It provides for unanticipated expenses and loss of revenue. So again, it's that account that we can dip into if needed. It's an indicator of the health of our organization's finances. We have a target of maintaining a fund balance of 25%. And if it exceeds 25% at the end of the fiscal year, then we will move the excess over to our capital investment fund. And that helps us with future capital needs. So the level for our fund balance also is a meaningful consideration when we are issuing debt, which we are doing in the upcoming fiscal year. So we want to maintain a good position with our fund balance because that affects the interest rate that we will have to pay on those bonds that we're issuing. And it's best practice to limit fund balance allocations to one-time, non-recurring needs. So this is a chart for our fund balance ending position for each fiscal year. So at the end of fiscal year 23, we ended with a very high fund balance, 35.4%. And those higher fund balances were achieved over that time period because we were seeing an influx in additional monies related to the COVID pandemic. So we were receiving the ARPA funding and other state and federal grants that helped us provide services, and it actually helped save some of our general fund dollars during that time period. And so at the end of fiscal year 23, we transferred approximately $7 million into our capital investment fund at the end of that fiscal year. Last year, without the benefit of those additional revenues coming in, we ended the year, and because we also allocated fund balance during the year to support the budget, we ended with a 21.7% fund balance. So we did not have available funding to transfer over to the capital investment fund. We have a target set of maintaining. The threshold is 18%. Like if it drops below 20, we're starting to get very nervous and wanting to take some measures to cut spending. So we did not, we were very protective of that fund balance this year, and we have not needed to dip into that. So we are anticipating that we will finish this fiscal year in a slightly higher position with our fund balance at 22.4%. For fiscal year 23, I am recommending that we utilize some fund balance. It's slightly less than what we appropriated this year, but within that fund balance appropriation, I want to emphasize that just over $900,000 of the general fund appropriation is funding that we already have identified for a particular use, and that is the ARPA funding. I mean, we've saved that specifically for some significant one-time projects. So the board has already identified the mattress and tire shredder in the amount of $506,000 of funding in the CIP for next year. So we would be allocating ARPA dollars towards that. If we receive a matching grant, then the board would consider moving forward with that project. And I'm also recommending that we utilize $400,000 of the remaining $600,000 or so that's currently undesignated in ARPA funding towards one-time capital expenses for the school system. Register of Deeds Technology Fund, we're doing a fund balance allocation of $14,500 for the purchase of replacement computers, and then we are making fund balance allocations out of the public health and DSS funds. Both have very healthy fund balances. These allocations represent about 10% of what they have currently in their fund balance. And this is used mainly as a placeholder due to delayed funding coming in from state and federal funds for those departments. An overview of expenditures. So public safety makes up the largest percentage of our budget. Next, human services and education are both at about 20% of our funding, followed by general government at about 15%. So as far as operating cost, this budget, although it's increasing by $5.1 million, it is very much focused on maintaining what we currently have in place, ensuring that our workforce remains strong to carry out the county services, ensuring that we are still able to carry out the county services despite rising costs of the services that we utilize, of supplies and of maintenance expenses. And this is affecting not only the county, but the school system and the community college, as you see within their budget request. So we are maintaining the cost of living adjustment for county employees in the next fiscal year. And this is again to support our pay plan that we implemented in fiscal year 24. We are seeing increased contributions to both health insurance and retirement for the county itself as the employer. The employees' contributions are not changing for either one of those benefits. And then adding 7 new positions and adding the new debt service for the 2 buildings that were purchased. So as far as new positions go, I'm recommending funding for 7 new positions. 5 of these are within social services. And please note within social services, when you look at this chart, the cost for each of these additional positions is offset by revenue that we receive from the state. So we get reimbursement for many of the positions at different levels based on the services that they provide. So we would be adding 3 positions, 1 supervisor and 2 social workers to foster care and adoptions. And this is mainly due to changes within the state's calculation for workload, caseloads. They have recently adjusted their recommendations for caseload levels, so this will help us drop those numbers to be in alignment with what the state is recommending. We would also be adding a social work within the guardianship area, and this is for our elderly population within the county. We have an increasing need there. And then a supervisor within adult Medicaid. And then 2 other positions are recommended. We have already given you a preview of the supervisor within animal control. So this would be in bringing that function out of the sheriff's office, we would pull the 2 animal control officer positions that are in the sheriff's office back into the animal services department and fund a new animal control supervisor to oversee this function, be in the on-call rotation, respond with our 2 county officers as well as the city animal control officer. And then within Person Industries, adding a production maintenance technician, and this is related to the new systems that they're putting in place, the new kind of workflow for the improved recycling machinery and sort system, and it will redistribute the consumers and where they're working on the floor, and this maintenance technician would come in to learn how to maintain this new equipment and also work with the consumers and the existing staff. Vehicles. I'm recommending 18 fleet vehicles. This meets all the requests that were submitted by departments. So it's 18 fleet vehicles plus 3 PATS vans. And you'll see on the chart there, Animal Services would receive 2, General Services 1, Person Industries 2, Sheriff 8, and Social Services 5, and then 3 for PATS. We did originally look at replacing a larger number of vehicles, again with the aim in mind of modernizing our fleet, improving our safety, improving our fuel efficiency, reducing maintenance costs, and continuing with kind of that push we did in the current fiscal year towards that goal. But determined that within this particular budget, it would be prudent to move forward with these 18 vehicles rather than the 30 that we originally evaluated as potentially needing to be replaced due to age and mileage and mechanical issues. So we feel good with these 18, and again, these are in alignment with what the departments had initially identified as needs. In addition, we plan to sell 8 underutilized vehicles, so that will reduce the overall size of our fleet. Those vehicles are older vehicles that have not been driven because they are not really desirable as far as hopping into and driving around for our employees. But if they have not been driven, then we've decided there's really not an ongoing need for them. And now employees will have the opportunity to utilize the newer vehicles that we're ordering. So the total cost for these replacement vehicles and the 3 PATS vans is $845,000. So that's $405,000 less than what we spent in the current fiscal year within our fleet fund. Supporting the county workforce. So funding a COLA in the next fiscal year results in about a $1.1 million increase to salary and benefits costs. Merit pay, I've calculated the impact of that as about a $345,000 increase, and that's just calculated based on salary. Merit pay is awarded at different points throughout the fiscal year based on anniversary date. So some employees receive that earlier in the year, so this accounts for a full year's expense. Some receive it towards the end of the fiscal year. That's why it's not as much of a budgetary impact in the new fiscal year. Longevity pay is funded at an increase of $397,000, and then the mandatory retirement contribution increases by $465,000. Within our self-funded health insurance, that self-contained fund does increase by $831,000. Again, the county contribution is only increasing by 3%, but we do have new positions that would be receiving health care within that fund, and we are anticipating some higher claims costs, but again, that's a self-contained fund, so we have funding available in there to address those expenses if they are to occur. Volunteer fire department. So the fire tax rate decreases to 4 cents. The overall budget within the fire tax district is increasing by $374,000. Per the contracts with the volunteer departments, they are each receiving a 2% increase. And this budget also includes the ISO bonus that Timberlake received in the current fiscal year. So that continues into future budget years. And then one other change, significant change that I'm recommending is moving the funding for the City of Roxborough Fire Services contract from the general fund. We've been funding the majority of that contract in the general fund at $412,000 in the current fiscal year. All of the services that the city provides under this contract are within the rural fire districts that are paying the fire and rescue services tax. So moving it into that fund is utilizing that revenue source that's being paid for the city's services. They provide mutual aid throughout the unincorporated areas of the county, and they also serve an actual Person County 1, so their own fire district within the rural area, so outside of the city limits. So this contribution would fund those services through the fire and rescue services tax. The citizens that are receiving those services are paying this tax. And then it also continues part-time staffing at $790,000. Nonprofit funding request. So the Museum of History did submit a request for $40,000 in the upcoming fiscal year. We are currently funding them at the $40,000 level. We started that 2 fiscal years ago. In fiscal year 23, we allocated $20,000. So these allocations have been in addition to just the general support that the county provides the museum. The museum occupies county property, so we generally provide for the maintenance and upkeep of that property. But this goes over and above that to assist the museum with making improvements to their campus infrastructure and developing their physical presence and their staffing in order to become self-sustainable so that they are able to host the fundraising events and able to have the facilities to offer the services that are going to generate revenues for the museum to become self-sustaining. Then we've also funded PCBIC, the Person County Business and Industrial Center, in the last 2 fiscal years. So $10,000 in fiscal year 24 and $62,800 in fiscal year 25. I do want to note in your budget document there is an error in their request for this year. It got carried over as $62,800. It does not impact the bottom line or the overall budget. They actually requested $50,000 for fiscal year 26. In the recommended budget, that is recommended at 0. But what I did was moved that 62.5 from the current year, or 62.8 from the current year, from that line item into the economic catalyst, or into the industrial incentives line item. So if the board has further discussion and desires to fund PCBIC in the next fiscal year, then funding is available within that line item to allocate into a line item for PCBIC in the approved budget. The request that they submitted to me showed that they would actually have an operating surplus based on their budget for next year of $45,000. So I didn't see that a $50,000 county contribution was warranted based on the budget that they had developed and submitted. So we can have further discussion about that, but that's the rationale behind not recommending that funding for the next fiscal year. For the school system, recommending full funding for their current expense request, which is $14.3 million. It's an 8.64% increase. They did request an increase in regular capital, and their request for $914,000. This is $359,000 over what we're currently funding them. I'm recommending $706,000 for regular capital. That's a $150,000 increase. And again, I'm recommending that increase be funded with the ARPA dollars that we've reserved for special one-time projects. Technology capital request, they requested $1.2 million, and this is for Chromebook replacements for grades 3 through 5 and teacher laptop replacements. And that's an increase of $700,000 over the current budget of $500,000. I'm recommending $750,000 for technology capital. This is a $250,000 increase, and that is to be funded through ARPA funding as well. So again, that's the $400,000 recommendation, which is a fund balance allocation of the reserved ARPA funding. Then they do have within the CIP, which we have already thoroughly reviewed, school improvement projects with the issuance of LOBs in the upcoming fiscal year. And their share of the debt service in the fiscal year 26 budget is $1.6 million. I do want to note I found a typo in the manager's recommended budget letter as well in your document. The current expense funding for the school system is $14.3 million is recommended. I did not get that updated in the manager's recommended budget. So this line in the recommended budget letter is wrong, but within the actual budget it is correct. So it does not affect any numbers. It's just in the letter. So I wanted to note that. With Piedmont Community College, they are requesting a $1.8 million current expense budget. This is a 6.93% increase. I am recommending full funding for that. It continues the $10,000 for the small business incubator. They have requested less in capital, so that's a $21.5 thousand decrease for a budget of $63,500. And then we've been through their CIP. Their portion of the CIP is funded at $735,500, and the portion of debt service related to the chat building in fiscal year 26. Oh, sorry. There's the slide. The funding for the chat building in fiscal year 26 for debt service is $850,000 of that budget. So I'll let you take a look at this slide before I move on. Okay. And I did want to show you the organizational chart for the county. Commissioner Wilburn and Commissioner Royster and I attended the Essentials of County Government class that was offered by the School of Government. And I know it's small on this slide, but they shared the org chart to the right. And this is showing just county government structure. And, you know, you can get lost in all the diagonal lines. It includes much more than county departments on that. It includes the school system and court system and state legislature. It just kind of shows how county government is linked into everything. But the significant thing that I wanted to mention that Commissioner Wilburn has identified as a potential change to our county org chart is that at the top is voters. That's what's at the very peak of the School of Government org chart. And we have traditionally put citizens of Person County at the top of our org chart. So I've taken a look at how other organizations are identifying kind of that level of accountability within their org charts. And a Google search and looking at the first 2 pages of results showed that it seems to be pretty evenly distributed between citizens, residents, voters, or just not including that level on the org chart and just showing the county organization with the Board of Commissioners at the top of the chart. So I want to just put that out there for discussion purposes, and I'm going to quickly conclude this presentation so we can wrap that into the discussion if you would like. Next steps in the budget process. We will have the budget public hearing on June 2nd. That will be held in the auditorium downstairs in the county office building, and that meeting will begin at 6 p.m. So the public are invited to come and comment on this budget. And then we have some dates to discuss for budget work sessions. So I am proposing Friday, June 6th at 9 a.m. And then if a second budget work session is needed, Monday, June 9th at 9 a.m. And we can come back to this slide to discuss your availability. So for the general public's awareness and also for accessibility for the commissioners, copies of the budget will be available on the county website electronically, as well as hard copies in both the clerk's office here and at the library. And if anybody has questions or feedback they'd like to share about the budget, feel free to call the county manager's office at 336-597-1720. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much. Is there any questions from the board regarding the recommended budget?
Yeah. So we didn't have that presentation either, so is that gonna be available online after the meeting?
We
The
can,
slideshow.
it gets incorporated into the minutes, but we can go ahead and post it online. We can post it online kind of as a placeholder until the minutes are published. I can also send it to y'all electronically.
Okay. Is there any savings to doing the reval more frequently? I know that, I think Virginia, I heard, does it every year, and there's some other counties within North Carolina doing it more frequently, so there's maybe not so much sticker shock, and I know that in the past, we have evaluated based on, where the market is as to whether it was needed at all, like in 2009, I think in 12, there wasn't much change, so, you know, you still have the opportunity to only do it every 8 years if there's not a need, but I'm just wondering if does it have to go into the same amount of depth and detail if you do it every year versus if you do it every 4?
So my understanding of the process is it would need to go into the same amount of depth and detail. It would, like you said, it would reduce the sticker shock. The change would be more gradual. There would probably be less to have to go back and reevaluate. We would be catching changes in a more timely manner. So in a way, it would create some efficiencies there. I do not anticipate there would be cost savings. I anticipate there would be additional expenses associated with the reval because we would either need to contract with an appraiser or a firm as we currently do to conduct the reval, and likely add staff as well to be able to keep up with the workload associated with completing a reval each year, or either bring some of those functions that are currently provided by an outside contract in-house. So I anticipate we would need a larger staff to support a more frequent revaluation process, and would likely need to continue contracting, although a contract may be smaller if it is on a more frequent basis. But I don't know what that whole picture looks like without doing a more thorough analysis of that. But you're right, it does keep us current. I think Wake County is an example of a county that is moving forward with doing annual revals. They have a very extensive staff, and they are a very large county to be able to carry out that function, but we may be able to find out some more information from them, if I'm remembering that correctly. So it is possible. Not so sure about the savings, but the benefits would be just in having more current data and information, and for the public's awareness of the current market factors and how that affects their individual properties, rather than the shock that comes with waiting every 4 years or even longer.
Or maybe even just being more vigilant about if there's a big change in the market, doing it more frequently, in the same way that you do it less frequently if there's not.
True.
Is Russell gonna present in the work session any projections for new investments and when new construction might be taking place or having an impact?
We don't have that planned for a work session, but if that's something that the board would like to have, as a work session item, we can add that in.
Yeah, I think if there's any indication of what new investments over the last year or two, or projections on how that can help increase the tax base, that'd be helpful.
Okay.
And then the org chart, I did ask you to include that. So it did stand out to me when we went to the School of Government and they had voters up there. And I would like to see us adopt that for our org chart, because I think it's a helpful reminder to citizens, a helpful reminder to this board, and a helpful reminder to staff that while citizen input is valued and important, our government model is that we are elected representatives of the body, of the public. And so the decisions made by this board should be taken into consideration of what our platforms were when we ran, and it gives more responsibility to the voters to get to know candidates, who are they voting for, what do they stand for and represent, and it helps us to cast a vision and move forward instead of having things change based on this public comment or that social media post along the way. So I think that gives more awareness and more gravity to what our roles are. And I'd also like to see the advisory boards included in here, because I attended the planning board meeting this last month, and there were 2 applications, and it went 3 hours and 10 minutes. And they, for the last 3 meetings that I've attended, have had a gridlock where there was a 3-3 vote, and that was one of the things that prolonged the meeting. But I think we should also be more vigilant about when we're appointing people to our advisory boards, to make sure that they understand the vision and mission of the board, and maybe we should even do interviews, and just to make sure that that's understood. It doesn't make any sense for efficient government for us to have our advisory boards in conflict with this board's goals. So I'd like to see that included also.
Going back to the budget work session dates, the 6th and I believe the 9th at 9 o'clock, does that accommodate the commissioner schedules? Okay. All right, so we're planning for the 6th and the 9th
Okay.
on that as well. Any other questions, feedback? All right,
Okay.
thank you, ma'am.
Sure. You're welcome.
All right, item 8C, strategic plan quarterly report. You're up again, county manager.
I am. Okay, so within your packets, you did receive the quarterly report from our departments regarding the strategic plan. So this is reporting on progress made through March of 2025. And the detail was provided in your packets. I have highlighted some of those accomplishments during the budget presentation. I do want to note that within the budget document, one of the objectives for GIS in the new fiscal year is to create a tracking platform for our strategic plan. So this is something that our GIS director, Sally Vaughn, feels like she has the tools to do to improve that process that we're using for the strategic plan tracking, and make it more in real time and available online for the commissioners and the public to view, and maybe in a more digestible format. So we're going to work on evolving that process in the new fiscal year. But for now, you have pages of text with updates, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have as far as progress that's been made and work that remains to be done. And just keep in mind that this strategic plan was set up to span 2 fiscal years as far as the original objectives that coincided with the focus areas.
Any feedback, questions for the county manager?
Yeah, for goal 6, should there be a 6.5 added for the countywide feasibility study that we approved in the CIP?
Yes, and that is on the strategic plan. So within the budget document, the copy within the budget document has that, I believe. Let me see. Well, the way it's worded in the strategic plan is 6.5, complete space needs study, including ADA accessibility for county facilities. And I don't think in the agenda packet that I included the actual copy of the strategic plan this time around. I just included the reporting tracking form. But that is on the strategic plan, and it is in the CIP.
Okay, and then for 11.1, which is monitor and analyze population growth and demographic changes and structure services to meet changing needs. I had shared with you a report from Henderson County where they had done a cost of services analysis, and they did that in-house, but the person who did it is now working part-time for the Association of County Commissioners. And I do think that is valuable for us as a county to have, to understand when there's new residential development, or existing residential development, how that'll change our cost of services that are being provided so that we can know, is this at a price point that's a break-even level for us? We're gonna actually get tax revenue from it, or it's gonna cost money to provide services, so we need to begin to expect, requests from staff and, you know, to increase our tax base to support that. So I would like to see that added, for us to have that done, whether it's in-house or a request from the association to support if they're able to.
And they still have strategic project coordinators. We may be able to use a resource through the NCACC to help us with something like that. And especially if kind of the point person who's already done it is a member of their staff. So I can look into that possibility.
Right, because one thing, when I attended the Citizen Academy for the Economic Development Night, the director had said that she shared with a developer that he was not doing the county any favors if he was building at a price point starting at 300,000, because our median range starts at 200,000. So I think, you know, we can use housing at all price points, and it would be good for, you know, organizationally to understand how that factors into the tax base.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look and see what the options are for that.
And didn't we remove 12.2 about the survey?
Well, you have suggested some changes, so I will bring back a revised strategic plan as we continue through the budget process and have that adopted with the budget. So we'll look at those recommended edits prior to adopting the strategic plan for the next budget cycle.
And then on page 106 for environmental health, the goal there was set for 4 weeks, and for the last 2 quarters, it's been 6 weeks for approvals average. Do you know what's causing that to be?
I don't know the reasons. I mean, typically delays are related to the weather. Their spring rain will often contribute to increased timelines as well as the number of applications that are coming through. We are fully staffed in that division, but I can get some more information on that.
Okay, and kudos to inspections for keeping it at 7 to 10 days. Page 127, goal 3.2 is about the UDO. I know that the previous board put it in place to wait until there was a full-time planning director for 30 days in their position to come back and evaluate that, but I think that was in October, and they probably did not anticipate that we would be here 7 months later without a full-time planning director.
Right.
So I do think it's time for us as a board to pick that back up, whether it's through a subcommittee or whatever. And so I'd like to add that to our next day meeting, maybe after we get the budget done, to revisit
what we're gonna do with that document? Or do you have any
Meaning-
update on?
Well, so, one thing that we are doing, our interim planning director, Margaret Houth, has identified a number of updates that need to be made to our existing ordinances. So, discrepancies between the general statutes, I mean, many of the references to the general statutes, but also some conflicting language between the various ordinances that we have in place. So she did talk with the planning board at their last meeting about initiating some text amendments at the staff level. So her intent, and she's talked with TC about this as well, is to bring those recommended updates to the planning board at their June meeting. And so those can be considered, and we can move forward with bringing those to the commissioners for your review. So that is kind of an interim step between now and when a UDO is adopted. I don't think that it would be a big lift for our existing staff resources with a part-time director in place or interim director in place to pick up the full UDO, but we can continue to kind of monitor where things stand. We are currently interviewing for a planning director, so I am hopeful that we are going to identify a permanent person for that, or a person for that permanent position. So is what you're requesting that we come back at the June Day meeting following adoption of the budget, or at the July Day meeting following adoption of the budget to kind of revisit the UDO
I
process?
think July.
Okay.
And my comment on that is regarding the UDO. I think it's essential to have a full-time director in place before we tackle that, because there's a lot of moving parts with that plan, and I would like to just make sure we get it right. And but I'm in agreement of having some stakeholders involved with a subcommittee to look at it. Like, as you remember, the last time it was discussed, you did have some stakeholders here to give their input on it. So I think they definitely need a seat at the table on that. So I'd be comfortable with beginning that process with a subcommittee, but for a full consideration, I think we need to have a full-time planning director in place for that.
Yeah, I agree with that approach of starting the process with stakeholders and then having something in place. But in attending the planning board meetings, it is confusing to developers because there it is on the website, you know, the draft UDO, and they don't know which one they're working with when they start or finish. And I think that the interim director has provided some feedback about whether that is even going to go through or not to some developers. So there's just confusion out there that I would like for us to be able to put to rest.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Oh, just one more thing, 14.4 about animal services on page 134. I guess that can be moved now from sheriff's office to animal services.
Right. Yes.
All right, thank you. All right. Item 8D, public records request process, Brian Hart and Chris Purrier.
Okay, you're welcome.
So good morning, everyone. So this is essentially a follow-up from a previous meeting regarding the public records request process. So some of the questions that had been posed or requested additional feedback or follow-up on, we have to what extent possible we have done so. So this presentation will include a brief updated statistical report, including staff time, and a comparison of some county policies specifically regarding the cost for public records requests. So as previously discussed or shared, the statistics that are on the left side of the screen have just been updated to reflect our current use. So we've received 175 requests, 154 have been closed, 21 remain open, 31 requests became overdue, 3 requests have been paused, 16 late responses, 2 days to respond is kind of the median, and 4 days to respond has been the average. And then as it relates to staff time, because I know this was a particular concern expressed by the commissioners, so staff have begun more consistently recording and documenting the time spent on responding, reviewing and responding to requests. And so there's been 27 total hours. It takes 0.33 median hours to respond to each request, and 0.94 average hours spent on each request. And all of these statistics are pulled directly from Next Request. So again, that tool has been very useful in compiling and being able to report out statistics. And then 8 hours and 30 minutes was the longest time reported. That was for a request related to public health and environmental health. And then 2 minutes was the shortest response time, and there are several of which kind of fall in that category. And then I know there was particular interest in Cleveland County. We've had some difficulty kind of aligning schedules and getting in touch with them, but we have been persistent in that. But however, since we were not able to connect the dots and speak with them directly, we did look at some other counties of similar size and proximity to Person County. And so, again, didn't do a complete review of all of their policies, because not every county actually has a formal policy regarding public records requests in the way that we do. But as it relates specifically to special service costs, it's fairly similar. So in Davie County, it states, as conveyed on the presentation, that the costs associated with extensive use of information technology resources, including labor, cost of the personnel providing these services, or for greater use of information technology resources that is actually incurred by the county or attributable to the county. It does say, however, that there shall not be additional surcharge for labor involved in reviewing records to determine what records or parts of records shall be provided. And so that's consistent across the board. And then in Granville County, I should note that Davie County's policy was from 2019, and to my knowledge, it hasn't been updated since, but it's still relatively consistent with ours, with the exception of us kind of specifying the 4 hours piece. And then in Granville County, they don't necessarily have a formal policy per se, but it does, upon review of their website, and I did have an opportunity to speak to their public information officer, and essentially what they stated was that the request will be satisfied as promptly as possible, but the time frame for completion will vary depending upon the breadth and complexity of the request, and then fees for records will be charged in compliance with North Carolina General Statute 132 and the Granville County fee schedule. So when I spoke with the Granville Public Information Officer specifically, I wanted to inquire about what was conveyed on the fee schedule as it relates to public records requests, and what he confirmed was that those costs or fees are only for register of deeds types of requests that really aren't public records requests. They really refer them to those appropriate departments, and then those fees get assessed or charged according with the established fee schedule. So again, the instances in which counties are really able to charge for fees for public records requests, it's kind of seldom. So, Chris, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think you hit all the highlights on that. That's kind of what we discussed last time. I know the attorney was going to gather it. I'm not sure if that.
Thank you for that segue, Chris. I owe an apology to you all. I'd been asked at the 421 meeting to provide just a breakdown of the time we've spent, and I've had other matters come up for the county between then and now, so I will provide that to the board, but it's not available today, so my apologies on that.
And that is more just a cost on the county side, correct? That's not something we're looking to hand off because we can't statutorily.
Right.
So that's just more of an awareness thing from that side due to the redactions and whatnot. But yeah, from everything, what we've seen, what the statute shows, and what Brian was just talking about, there are minimal opportunities for us to recover the cost, unfortunately, related to public record requests, unless they are either overly excessive in requirements for technology resources, or require us to provide it in a format that it's not already in, like printing. We can provide, or we can charge the cost of paper, toner, things like that. But yeah, it's unfortunately minimal on the recovery costs.
So from our last discussion, we talked about these staff reports, and they don't really reflect what I'm trying to get at, because I think the commissioners and maybe the staff put this system into place because of what I would call activist groups that are trying to weaponize this feature of county government. But you all have found that it's beneficial to track other types of requests through this too, and that's fine and good. But if something is taking 2 minutes, then that's probably just a function of the department that's now being classified as a public records request. That's not the kind of thing that I'm talking about helping with citizen awareness about. And then there's only 31 entries out of 175 requests received, so that's, not really an accurate depiction of staff time related to this either. And then the comparing policies, again, this was something that was brought up at the training we did at the School of Government, where the topic came up, and the counties that had been impacted in a similar way to we have, is where the Cleveland County reference came to. So Davie and Granville may not have experienced what we've experienced here, and they may not have needed to look at what we're talking about. But I think you all did say that there could be, you can charge for 4 hours of clerical or supervisory assistance. And so if we're getting into that, that's where I think this is definitely the kind of fishing expedition public records request that we want to target. So I think that the policy should be updated to include being able to charge, not just for IT over 4 hours, but for clerical and supervisory assistance over 4 hours. So I think there's that, and then maybe just going forward, if the county attorney's able to just invoice based on that time,
Certainly.
and we can get that updated however often you invoice. And then you don't have to go back and try to pull it out, but just going forward, if you can itemize that.
Sure, we can provide that information to the board.
And we may be able to take that information, add that as a note to the request itself for when that does get published, to show what our cost was on that, so we can show potentially, we have to look at that, but we may be able to note that is, while it's not a recoverable cost, it's a cost for that particular request, and tie that amount to the request based on that invoice.
And then maybe we can include waiving that fee if it is a legitimate media outlet, because I wouldn't expect them to abuse it.
We were probably gonna say the same thing.
We had said, my recollection of the previous discussion is that we would go back and we would look at some other policies. We would try to touch base with Cleveland County, which Brian has tried extensively to have a conversation with them, and it has just not worked out, to find out how they are charging, because I'm not aware of other examples of being able to bill at the level that their clerk had shared at the essentials class. So, and so they have looked at some other policies. We did have some discussion around that 4 hours for clerical and supervisory assistance. And I don't know, we haven't really focused in on that to determine if that is legally defensible. We have not found other examples of that approach being in place. We can look at that a little more closely. The other aspect of this that we did attempt to do and follow up to the previous conversation was make the request public through the portal. And there's a universal setting to just change it and make them public going forward. And within 24 hours of activating that setting, we had somebody share personal information through the portal, and it was briefly available online before Michelle caught it. And we had a discussion about backtracking on that, taking that setting off, because in order to make, even though we have a disclaimer that says this information is public information, do not put personal information in this form, it happened in less than 24 hours. So we don't think the county's at risk because we had that disclaimer in place and it was only briefly available. Thanks to Michelle for finding that and for quick action on the part of these two for rectifying that situation. But going forward, if we are to make the request public, then we're going to have to look at, staff needing to review each request and either hide some because they have personal information in them, or figure out if there's a way within the system to redact information within the request. So we have not followed through with that piece of it because there are some logistical things that we need to continue to look at. So right now, the system itself is serving a very valuable purpose for staff in terms of managing the request. But the 31 entries that you see for time that have been recorded, that has really only been utilized over the past month since the last meeting. So that's why only 31 of the 175 requests have that data associated with it. So we'll continue to compile that, but we still need to look at the way we're making things publicly accessible or not through this portal, how we're using it. And if we need to go back and revisit the policy as far as charging, we can do that. We just have not arrived at a place yet where we have a comfort level with setting a certain threshold for charging.
And could I just add one additional piece to that? On the personal information, this is really for your information as much as for citizens. If you submit a public records request, the request itself is a matter of public record. Your name, if you've put it on there, which we can't require, but is also a matter of public record. What the manager's getting at are the things that you kind of intuitively know, but we're not allowed to make public. Social security numbers, driver's licenses, someone put a credit card number in there. These are things that we have to redact out. State law is pretty clear about it. So it's a process internally we're working through.
Okay. So you're gonna provide some additional information as well.
About the time that
About
we've
the
spent.
time.
Yes, sir.
And I think, it's merit to continue this conversation. And I understand you were trying to get in contact with Cleveland County. Please pursue that as well. And we'll look at tabling this till that information has been provided, and the board will give further guidance of the structure of how we go with updating the policy. Is everyone in agreement with that? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 8E, lobbying service agreement, Manager Kathy.
Within your agenda packets, you do have a proposal from Checkmate to provide lobbying services. This would be geared towards seeking funding at the state level to build a new middle school for Person County Schools. This is to meet demand with development and a growing population, as well as just space needs in our current aging facilities. So the proposal is for a lobbying fee of $10,000 per month. That's to be shared between the county and the school system. There is currently funding available in this budget for the remainder of this fiscal year, and I have included within the governing body contracted services line item in fiscal year 26, $60,000 to be used for this purpose if approved. One thing I would like to note for the board and for your consideration is if we are to move forward with this agreement, then we may very likely benefit from these services in terms of securing funding that can be used for school system needs. We have traditionally kind of lobbied for all intents and purposes at the staff and from staff and elected officials' efforts, our legislators and other key players at the state level for other various needs throughout the county. We have been successful in getting funding with their help through state allocations for important initiatives like the water and sewer needs within the city that benefit the entire county when those improvements are made. We've received state funding to go towards the upfit of the chat building. We've received significant funding for our airport. So the runway extension project that's currently underway is primarily funded through state funds. We anticipate needing some additional funds to complete that project. So the board just needs to consider this kind of becomes the top priority in seeking that state funding, and there could potentially be some trade-offs for those other projects. But we do have the opportunity to proceed with this lobbying effort if we are successful. When it comes to school funding, they would certainly be trying to advocate for funding from the needs-based education lottery funding, as well as appropriations that could potentially be made through the state budget. We would be prioritizing that over other projects that we've had out there. And most recently, when I have talked with our legislators about needing funding, we focused in on the new terminal that the commissioners have set funding aside for, $2 million to go towards a new terminal at our airport. So we were advocating for additional state funding to go towards that project, as well as construction of an emergency services facility, which we had identified as a need in the county, as well as the upfits for the chat building, and then backfilling on PCC's campus once those programs move off campus, then renovating their current facilities to provide more and better spaces for their offerings there on campus. So those are some of the more recent projects that we've had out there that we have sought state funding for, and now this would potentially be in the mix as the top priority item moving forward. If we do contract with the lobbyists, this would be their focus, and if that funding's secured, they could perhaps help us with some of those other needs going forward.
Any questions from the board?
I noticed that, we can terminate with 30 days, and also wonder, how will we track if this is successful? Are there updates that are gonna be provided to us? What is the calendar cycle for this grant that the school system has applied for to know, did we make it or not? What is kind of the...
So part of the contract is to have weekly or every other week updates with the key stakeholders at the county level and the lobbyists to find out more about what they're seeing at the state level, what they are doing in terms of action and advocating, where things are in the process, what they foresee as the chance of success moving forward. So there would be routine meetings. Those are typically held virtually, where we would have regular check-ins with the lobbyist for those updates.
So even though this is now prioritizing, seeking funding for a new school, maybe over some of those other projects, it's also leveraging a partnership with the school system to do this, and it doesn't mean that there couldn't also be, support for those other projects that go along with this, and we should be able to find out within a reasonable time whether this effort's gonna move forward or not. Would you agree?
Yes, yes. And we would ensure that our lobbyist is aware of our other priorities as well. So they'll have those in their back pocket too.
Do I have a motion to approve the agreement?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Any further discussion? All right, having here none, all in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, motion's approved. All right, Chairman's report. I would like to inform the board, after speaking with the county attorney, that there is a conflict of interest regarding the upcoming special use permit for the site at Woodsdale, and I will be recusing myself at that public hearing. The county attorney is in full agreement with this, and we both feel it's entirely appropriate. County manager? County Attorney.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really have anything else to add on the conflict of interest question, but just to give the public an update on the special use permit process, you'll recall that the board had continued the hearing to June 2nd. However, there was some discussion about possibly having a special called meeting. I've now spoken with the attorneys for the parties who are involved, and it's pretty clear that we're going to need to schedule a special called meeting, both to allow enough time for that hearing. We don't want to try and jam in this quasi-judicial process when we have a very full meeting for other county matters as well. Also, as everyone knows, we're in the process of filling the vacancy for Mr. Ellickson's seat, and we'll need to schedule a special call meeting so that that new council or that new commissioner will be able to participate in the hearing. Mr. Chairman, can I also provide an update about the vacancy process?
Yes, sir.
So Mr. Ellickson resigned on May 5th. By letter dated May 8th, I notified Ms. Catherine Lawrence, the chair of the Person County Republican Party, of the vacancy and have asked them to provide their recommendation, if any, in writing to me. She's gotten back with me and said that her group will do that as soon as they're able. And as soon as we receive that, I'll provide it to you. My understanding at this time is that the board will be discussing the vacancy with possible action at your June 2nd meeting.
I think it's essential for us to move forward and fill the vacancy, especially with the budget being discussed. I would recommend that the county attorney reach out one more time to the chairperson of the party to give them a 1-week deadline to submit a name. And so we will have 1 week to consider options in fulfilling that vacancy, because like I said, there's some very important issues upcoming, and the last thing this county needs is a tie on it. So I think it would be very prudent to expedite that request.
I'll let Ms. Lawrence know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, those are my comments. County Manager,
No report today.
Vice Chairman Thomas.
I just want to thank Catherine and the finance department for putting the budget together and giving it to us, and it was time to look over everything and move forward with it. Thank you for your hard work.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Wilbur.
There were 8 of us who attended the Research Triangle Regional Partnership State of the Region event in Raleigh on May 7th. That's a great networking opportunity for us as a county. And I had a conversation with Bill Berger there, so first time I had met him in person. That was interesting. I attended the planning board meeting, as I mentioned. I have been attending the weekly meetings of the board of ENR, and they'll continue to meet monthly through June. This past weekend, on Friday and Saturday, I attended the Association of County Commissioners Board meeting. They provided to us legislative updates. There is a proposal to cut funding at the federal level for Medicaid, and they pointed out how significant this is for us as a county, because North Carolina is one of only 8 states that has county-based eligibility. And so with there only being 8 states affected by this at the level that we are, there's not going to be as much pushback necessarily. And so they recommended that we do reach out to Bud and Tillis and let them know how this would impact us at the county level. Another thing that is proposed is for Viper funding, which is currently funded through the state, to now be funded through county sales tax, Article 42. And that was something that was moving even on Friday when we were receiving the update. And so that would be a new obligation for us that we currently don't have. And so we definitely don't want that. So their recommendation is for it to be funded through the 911 fund. But they said the telecom communities or companies are gonna be pushing back on that, so we need to make sure from the county level, we are also pushing back. So they're doing that through the association, but they ask us to do it also, and I did send a message to Representative, Jeffers this morning following that meeting. I also had a couple of meetings with some regional partners to discuss some regional transportation projects, so I'll keep you all updated as that moves forward. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Royster?
Yes, last meeting, I forgot to mention, the Special Olympics. I think we were all talking about the wall that heals. So on May 2nd, I was honored to participate in the opening ceremony of the Special Olympics. And it was really exciting. I was able to get my morning walk in. I didn't know we had to walk, but Manager Kathy was there, school superintendent, as well as representatives from our Board of Education and City Council. So that was really exciting. But I do want to make a statement. We have quite a few people hurting in our community right now over some recent events, violent events that happened. And I've received calls and messages. And what I do want to say is that we cannot put blame on one person in our community when something happens. And again, this is something that I feel we need to, as a community, and I see that we are attempting to go in that direction with establishing certain programs with the Parks and Rec department, is to continue to invest in our youth. The young man over the weekend or earlier, well, last week, was killed. And again, it's not a blame game, but this is our community, and we all have a responsibility to make sure that our communities are safe. We can't solely blame, we all say, and if you're Southern, you're from the country, training starts at home, and it does. But we do understand that every home is not the same, and I'm not pointing fingers at any particular families or anything, so I want to put that out there. But it takes a community, so we can't say the school is failing, we can't say law enforcement is failing, we can't say elected officials are failing. And the reason I'm saying this openly is because I'm receiving the calls and messages. So in order for us as a community to keep moving forward and want our youth to, feel like they're safe. I received a call from a grandmother who's, she was still frantic because her grandchildren, young children, were running because they heard gunfire. And when people say things don't happen here in Person County, they do. But we can't just blame one particular community, one particular entity, and that's what I've been getting. So I wanted to say something openly, that it's going to take all of us to come together in whatever form. All of us have some type of talent or skill or something to address some of the needs in this community and to support each other. But again, I've received the blame calls, but we all cannot, each individual entity can't do this by themselves. It's going to take all of us to come together in some form to move forward, to help to keep Person County like it is. I'm from here. I had fun as a kid, and I want every kid to have that same opportunity and every family to have opportunities for them. So I just wanted to put that out there for us to remember that this is our county, not just one particular person and one particular community. It's our county. We're all here in Person County. And so it's going to take all of us to come together to move forward and to get through this. So my heart goes out to every family that's hurting, not just from this past incident, but we've had other incidents that happen in recent years. So, I pray for this county every day. And those of you who pray, I encourage you to do the same. But, it's going to take all of us. And I just wanted to say my heart does go out, and prayers go out to those families that are hurting at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. At this time, do I have a motion to go into closed session number 1 per General Statute 143-318.11A4 for the purpose of discussion of matters relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the county with the following individuals permitted to attend: County Manager Catherine Cathy, Clerk to the Board Michelle Solomon, County Attorney T.C. Morphus Jr., and Economic Development Director Brandy Lynch.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion. Any further discussion? Having hearing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. We're now in closed session.